As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left.
So godlessness has been a rising theme in postmodern era, and it's the idea that smaller narratives should be pieced together to make a grand narrative. And that's different than one grand narrative that used to be used to form a hierarchy. And the new focus is materialistic, and it desires more.
People began to think in terms of consumerism, but that completely goes against what ancient society was built upon, which is religion. And in Rome, lives revolved around the idea of polytheism and having a hierarchy system in place so that everyday life runs more smoothly. And then Christianity rose to power, and many churches were reestablished, and old buildings repurposed in the churches. And architecture, design, and social and political realities are much differently depicted in a world without a god.
So now that we've really researched and experienced this severe change in beliefs and behaviors from ancient Rome to postmodern Paris, people's attitudes have really shaped the new idea of godlessness, and materialism has become the new focus. And the overwhelming desire for more has morphed people into having an obsession with objects, and life is no longer really revolving around God, but more consumerism and egotistical ideals.
Before the 1800s, architecture throughout the city of Rome was based on Catholicism and worship. For example, the Vatican, which is a representation of God, is a place for Romans to practice Catholicism. It is a church with high ceilings that represent being closer to heaven, and there are frescoes painted on the interior that depicts heavenly scenes from the Bible. These paintings are a representation of God and can be considered as art, whereas the Pompidou Museum, located in Paris, is an example of postmodern architecture. The Pompidou shows no religious iconography, and it is constructed out of plastic, metal, and steel instead of stone, hand-painted frescoes, and sculptures. The architects wanted to show less material instead of covering up the sides of their buildings. Postmodern architecture is a hodgepodge of different styles that are inspired from things such as pop art, Dr. Seuss, and even from places such as the Caribbean. Over time, art has become a part of consumerism because there is a target market for it. In the 1800s, paintings were being done for interiors of churches and were not being sold. Art is being sold at incredibly high rates, and the styles are not based on religion anymore.
Graphic design is everywhere. Even if you don't think it is, just ask Diane and she'll back it up. So the Pantheon is not that hard to connect if you think about it. The main thing is the big serif typography on the outside, just below the pediment. It is one of the first examples of typography used in Roman times. Just like a hot bod, it is chiseled and perfect. I can't pronounce what it says, but translated it means Marcus Agrippa, son of Lucius, consul for the first time, built this. Marcus Agrippa was the man who first built the Pantheon. After it burned down, the Emperor Hadrian had rebuilt it, replaced paganism with Catholicism, and dedicated it to Marcus. He had the words literally written in stone that Marcus was the originator. What a cool guy, right? The Romans now viewed Hadrian as their god due to his selflessness. What really ties it together is that today churches are always dedicated to a god, but the Pantheon is dedicated to one man who is viewed as a god. Although Hadrian probably would have preferred Messenger of God or God, greatest of designers. Next, on to the famous Eiffel Tower. It has been the landmark for France since 1889 after being unanimously selected as the winning design for the International Exhibition of Paris. Today, it serves as one of the most legendary icons, allowing people to recognize and idolize its origin through consumerism, buying virtually any paraphernalia with the Eiffel Tower on it. So this has become a huge market for vendors, especially the guys coming at us with selfie sticks and minifigurines to make a profit, because they know people are willing to buy things just because it has the Eiffel Tower on it. It's almost like Pixar didn't happen. If you didn't buy a souvenir, were you ever really there? After all, you can't go to France without visiting the Eiffel Tower. Iconography has turned it into the most visited building per year and the easiest silhouette to recognize anywhere. Although not geographically, the tower is the center of Paris. It attracts tourists to its VIP restaurant, the view from the top, and the partnered boat tours, thus generating millions of income per year. We want to purchase it instead of appreciate it. We want to be able to mass produce something for money, And that is why consumerism literally consumes the beauty of the building, its structure, and the history behind it all.
Capitol Hill is a place in Rome where Pope Paul III commissioned Michelangelo to redesign its plaza and face it away from the old Forum and now represent the new Church of Christianity. It physically faces towards St. Peter's Basilica. That was done in order to impress Charles V, who was expected to become the new Roman emperor at that time. This was important because it was making the church the focal point of Rome, facing the Vatican instead of the old pagan ways. This building physically masks the old religion with the new and powerful Christian religion. In the postmodernist era, Moulin Rouge became a place where it was the birthplace of the can-can dance. It was originally set up as an entertainment spot in Paris for the bougie people to slum it in a fashionable district. It became a place that was known for its extravagant shows and sexual costumes. Today, it is embodied by consumerism, costing €200 just to enter. It is meant to separate what classes can afford and what people can't. Just like Capitol Hill in Rome, it is a palace, which is a palace to Christian society. Moulin Rouge was a palace built for money and sex. Even a movie was made about Moulin Rouge, which heightened its exclusivity and contributed to the consumerism that Moulin Rouge is causing, with more sales and more memorabilia produced.
It's hard to say whether or not we're optimistic or pessimistic about the way postmodernism is taking us, because in theory it's great. It's making us work to relate to one another, and it's making us move in a direction that's not so centered around one thing, which in this case is God. And as we saw in ancient Rome, Christ was the center icon. And as postmodernism for beginners suggests, if you have a culture which Christ is the center of its icons, then Christianity is the center of its culture. And just like that now is different as it is, postmodernism has structures like the Eiffel Tower and Moulin Rouge as icons, which makes consumerism the center of our culture today. We've moved from God to status as our center, basically. And even though we prefer to live in a postmodern world, consumerism doesn't seem that attractive. And this novel suggests that we display what we buy conspicuously in order to differentiate ourselves socially.
Grazie. Danke.
Merci.
Gracias.
Next
is
abroad
abroad 2015. You think they have Wi-Fi?